With the discovery of a new major glitch in 2014, Super Mario World's fastest completion time got completely shattered, with it being pushed to under 10 minutes. This glitch, labeled Cloud, caused the record to be lowered a dozen times over the next few months thanks to how much time it saved when abusing it to skip phases in the Bowser fight. This time shot under 9 minutes and 50 seconds, and ever since then it has been a race to lower it to the next second barrier, with people asking, can this be pushed another 10 seconds? Is 9:39 humanly possible? After a decade of questioning, we no longer need to ask that, because on August 17th, 2023, Oil and Water did what was once thought to be impossible, and got the first time under 9 minutes and 40 seconds in the traditional fastest game completion category, 11 exit. This is the fastest route thanks to a star warp that takes you from Donut Plains all the way to the front door of Bowser. Today I want to touch upon what this run actually is, and analyze it by diving into the strategies that made such a time possible. Let's talk about it. The most popular way to both casually play and speedrun every single main Mario platformer is to complete it as fast as possible, no restrictions, with those categories usually called any percent, meaning any percentage. The reason why I bring this up is due to Super Mario World's situation regarding fastest game completion. In the early 2010s, the fastest game completion was called any percent, like most other Mario games, but that was short-lived. Only a month later, after the first ever record with Cloud, Jeff W356 became the first person to completely shatter that time thanks to completing a credits warp, allowing you to skip to the credits in the very first level of the game, Yoshi's Island 2. This absolutely decimated what was Super Mario World any percent and finished in 4 minutes and 59 seconds. With multiple people lowering this record even further, this led to the confusion of what to name both categories. What was any percent anymore? With these two runs being completely different, yet both still being ways to complete the game as quickly as possible, it was broken up into two separate categories. These two runs were renamed based on how many exits it took to complete in order to finish the run. The traditional any percent run was renamed 11 exit, with it taking that many levels to skip to Bowser, and 0 exit being the name for warping to the credits, since you can do that from the very first level. 11 exit has been separated even further since then thanks to two different glitches you can abuse in the 11 exit route. The first is Cloud, the glitch I already touched upon, and the second is Orb, which allows you to complete a stage immediately upon activating an orb sphere that you can get into your item box. While both of these are achieved by performing an item swap which allows you to eat a chuck with Yoshi in order to gain a power-up, the time saved from Cloud is roughly 40 seconds faster than Orb thanks to skipping all the animations in the Bowser fight, with a normal fight being about a minute slower than Cloud. In the case of Orb, you can use it to skip the Iggy cutscene, which ultimately only saves you somewhere in the ballpark of 10 to 15 seconds depending on execution. This is from the fact of having to go so far out of your way for the orb in the first place, which is at the very end of Yoshi's Island 1. You may remember I said there's a third 11 exit category too, which is glitchless. It does allow exploits such as clipping and zipping, which I'll talk about later, but bans both Cloud and Orb. Anyways, while every category split I've mentioned today has had plenty of competition, the most actively watched and celebrated runs by far in regards to 11 exit is Cloud. With there being 11 exits, plus Bowser's front door and fight, there's plenty to talk about. The first is the time of this new record, 9:39. I really want you to realize how much this specific time has been talked about over the last decade. Probably the biggest example is a human theory tool-assisted speedrun that achieves a 9:39 thanks to emulator tools and being able to create the precise inputs frame by frame. What's funny is that this isn't close to being optimal for a human theory run, with this using an outdated Cloud strategy on the American version of the game, which requires scrolling the screen. Besides not needing to scroll anymore, the Japanese version saves a quarter of a second per text box. With there being 2 total and 11 exit, this means a total of half a second to be saved. With other strategies in this tool assist being outdated, this theory run was still really impressive, with the record still being at 9:48 when this was made. This is where a lot of the initial 9:39 speculation came from, with it growing further and further as the record decreased over the years. Without further ado, I want to go level by level to show you the grueling combination of strategies that led to this being a 9:39 versus the 9:40 range times that were set over the many years. Starting with Yoshi's Island 2, this is where the beginning of the Cloud glitch occurs. For the sake of time, I'll be oversimplifying a ton of the complexity that goes behind both this glitch and many other strategies in this run. With Cloud being what is considered arbitrary code execution within the game, or ACE, a considerably easy setup was found on the Japanese cart. This leads to runs consistently getting past the chuck item swap, which gives you the Cloud, which can notably crash if you aren't set up correctly. The second to last Koopa is hit while dropping the shell Mario is holding, and is dropped far enough in order to not destroy any other Koopa. The Koopa you bop can only pop out left, with it doing the opposite, completely ruining the setup. The second Koopa is then used to hit the message block, with Mario in the consecutive frame hitting the block by jumping. You may wonder why he did that. Well, the record actually failed doing this correctly. Let's refer to the previous record of 940. You'll see that in this case, the Yoshi spawns a lot quicker. In fact, doing what I just described spawns 2 Yoshis at once, with one being invisible. With this causing Yoshi to spawn twice as fast, it saves half a second. Going back to the 939 though, he actually lost this time save, which is shocking because many previous records did get this. Anyways, time for the item swap. To achieve this, you want to spit out the red Koopa to spew out a fire at the correct height, and then grab the following green shell. In this case, Oil and Water does a faster version of this, where he kicks the green shell forward and then grabs it. This allows him to do the item swap slightly faster than what was being done for a long time previously. Showing them side by side, you can see how minor, yet better this is. Regarding the actual item swap, you want Yoshi's tongue to be sticking out to grab the coin. While Yoshi is tonguing the coin, you want to spin jump off the Yoshi at the same time. While doing this consistent setup requires you to simultaneously press X as well as the L and R triggers at the exact same time. Assuming you time this correctly and press the right buttons, this fast setup will make Yoshi swallow the running lookout chuck, which will give you the cloud power-up. This is because chucks are technically programmed as power-ups in this game, and Yoshi was able to swallow it just like he can with normal power-ups in the game, such as a cape or a fire flower. At this point, the glitch is done, with the rest of the level being your standard platforming to the goal tape. Yoshi's Island 3 is a lot less complicated in comparison to the previous stage, but still has a tiny bit to talk about. Most people when casually trying to speed through this level will get a 258 on their timer, but you can actually do slightly better. By maximizing your running on the brown platforms, they can slightly push you forward and save you enough frames to get a 259. Anyone that starts running this game for even a little bit tends to get the hang of this, and is a standard in runs. Yoshi's Island 4 in the middle of the level has a gap that typically requires you to briefly enter the water and jump out of it, except it doesn't have to be that way. By taking the red shell just before the gap, you can quickly press a left, then right, while throwing the shell mid-air in order to do this. This only saves up to 1/3 of a second, but it's still huge for such a short run. Typically, to get past the first room in Iggy, you have to briefly grab and jump off this cage in order to clear the lava gap, but not for this record. Oil and Water grabs the P-switch, lets go of it below him mid-air, and proceeds to perform a frame-perfect spin jump off it while it's entering the lava. This ultimately gets to a 283 in-game time entering the door, compared to a 281 normally, or a 282 with an intermediate strat named Underball. You'll notice that midways and power-ups are completely avoided, and this is because if you get the midway and then grab the fire flower in the block here, the cloud power-up will be overwritten. This leads to needing to do 3 well-timed jumps in order to defeat Iggy. There are 2 main objectives for Donut Plains 1, grabbing the cape and optimizing your flight speed. When flying, your flight speed can fluctuate between and including the values of 47 and 51. The way you lock in your speed is letting go of right and only pressing left to cape pump. At any time, you can press right to get a new value. Optimally, you want to lock in at 51 as soon as possible, and players can tell how fast they are going by how much the screen jitters. Time and time again, I have recommended a video by IsoFrieze if you'd like to understand this a little bit more. Link in the description. This is also the first secret exit in this run, and fun fact, every single stage after this grabs a secret in order to beat the game. The main thing to be mindful of when grabbing the secret here is being aware of flying as high as you can at the top of the screen. You need to fly above the pipe and time your cape pumps just right so you can land to put the key in the hole. Donut Secret 1 is the first water level in the game, and in regards to beating it quickly, holding items is your best friend. This is why a Koopa is grabbed in the sub-level, which majorly increases your swim speed. Once exiting back into the water, the main thing is being mindful of how cape spinning works. When spinning, the cape moves from left to right every 4 frames, which can be tricky when trying to keep your shell past the fish. Fortunately, you can get past the first one consistently by immediately spinning upon leaving the pipe, and from there it gets a bit trickier. It's possible to make it past the following section unscathed using well-timed spins and D-pad inputs, but you'll see in this run he briefly bonks. To rectify this, the D-pad is briefly let go, which makes sure that Oil and Water can spin into this next fish without any trouble. Pressing the P-switch while still holding the shell, the last obstacle is getting past this final group of fish. The first is generally not an issue to get past, but the next 2 can be quite tricky. To do this optimally, you need to not only spin through them while keeping the shell, but also immediately throw the shell upwards twice at the same time in order to gain enough height to the keyhole section. Ending this, you'll see he gets a 258, which is the realistic optimal in-game time to reach for, meaning overall, this execution was really clean. With how demanding the last room is, there have been plenty of records in the past which have had at least one slight hiccup here, with this record's slight adjustment being nothing in the grand scheme of things. Donut's secret house has become one of the trickiest levels over the years, with the strategy required becoming more and more demanding. Nowadays, you'll see that immediately upon starting the level, you can clip through the stairs to skip through the boo ring. This originates back to 2015, when SethBling figured out a clip was possible when slightly delaying. Over the years, this was researched and understood even further, with people figuring out that two things matter for this. One, how many frames you hold right before you delay, and two, how long you should delay before continuing to run right. A delay can be done by either letting go of the D-pad or ducking, with the latter being the more common choice. People have produced multiple charts to highlight what combinations makes clips possible, and you may notice there are actually different types of clips: low, middle, and high. If you take a look at the first ever 11 exit record with Stair Clip from Lost Core, he got a way higher clip. The lower you can get the clip, the better, because you want to reach the ground and start running again as quickly as possible. Getting a middle clip is the most common by far. You'll see also with the controller camera that when running up the stairs to clip, he holds both the run and jump button, with him letting go of jump immediately upon clipping in order to reach the ground quickly. There is so much more to this level though. After briefly jumping through a boot ring, Oil and Water enters the room by timing his flight in just a way that he is able to preserve it when entering the next room. This is a trick used throughout the game and is simply labeled Door Fly. In this case, he immediately jumps to enter Cape Flight and times a cape pump where he bumps this item block and starts moving under the level. Carefully pumping under the boo ring, he then needs to gain just the right amount of height to perform a cape cancel against a specific boo, and tap spin jump to quickly grab the switch without running on the platform it is on. There is so much that can go wrong here between accidentally hitting the boos or gaining flight too early or too late. Anyways, all that is left is to fly back to the right where the switch is used to enter the Big Boo fight, with that being way simpler than what was just required previously. Defeating Big Boo leads us to Star World, with this route requiring 4 quick secret exits in order to reach Bowser. The first is Star World 1, which abuses a trick called Zips. By abusing the fact that only 4 yellow blocks on screen can spin at a time, you can zip through all of these. This is due to the fact that when you spin more than 4, the blocks that were spun first will stop spinning and can push Mario downwards. Without zips, you can optimally only get a 285 time for the secret exit, with top runs being able to get at least a 291 with zips. Star World 2 is a lot less complicated, with the only goal here keeping Yoshi to keep your faster swim speed, timing a down input to perfectly clear an opening to reach the keyhole, and then swapping to the key for said keyhole. Star World 3 is the shortest level in the game. Within 6 seconds, Oil and Water uses this gray switch to hit the key block from below and immediately enter Cape Flight in order to item fly with the key to the hole. You can see he briefly lets go of the key to let it drop down before quickly re-grabbing it. This allows him to squeeze out a 193 time versus the standard 192. Star World 4 has a lot of similarity to Donut Plains 1, except instead of flying over the level, you fly below it. This is why here you start your cape pumps as quickly as possible in order to achieve the fastest flight speed value. With a couple of these mushroom platforms being quite low, you simply need to know when to start gaining height, which is not horribly long before the platform that houses the key and the keyhole, with a simple spin and jump ending the level. All the main levels are over, and now it's time for what Bowser has in store. Before reaching Bowser himself, you must go through 2 doors. There are 8 in total, with you having to pick between 1 to 4 and 5 to 8. In the case of 11 Exit Cloud, the most optimal is 2 and 7. Like Ghost House, you want to perform a door fly to make both of these rooms a breeze. The only worry spawns from door 7, where the Bowser statues can spit fire at different times based on a global timer built into the game. Fortunately, that wasn't an issue, which allowed him to reach Dark Room. Using carefully timed spin flies, the only thing left is Bowser, which is possibly the trickiest part of the whole run. This is where the cloud glitch at the very beginning finally comes into play. Upon starting the fight, the cloud is immediately dropped and you want to get in it immediately. By using the top left corner of the screen, you can skip animations in the Bowser fight by timing jumps with the cloud. With this skipping a majority of the waiting in the fight, this cuts the time of it down by roughly a minute versus properly playing it. As someone who has put many hours into getting a decent time using this glitch, I can tell you that getting a world record level fight is far from easy, with the tiniest mistake being a complete run killer. On top of the major nerves that pop up on such a good run, finishing this run cleanly after all the other tricks were done is an absolute miracle, which makes this 939.916 in my opinion the best ever achievement in Super Mario World speedrunning. So where can this category go from here? Well, I did already explain a couple tiny things Oil and Water could have improved on, which can also be backed up by the fact that his record is a 939.9, but his sum at best is a 938.0. First, there is the fast Yoshi trick I mentioned, which saves half a second, and secondly, the very slight slowdown in Donut Secret 1, which is minuscule in comparison. I did also mention that in Ghost House you can get a lower clip, but that is way less consistent and realistic for a human to grind out, especially when the fast Yoshi time loss is still in play. Speaking of fast Yoshi, there's a roughly as huge time save that people don't really go for in runs yet in Star World 1. You'll see that Oil and Water does a left zip to get to the keyhole, but you can actually do a faster right zip that gets to a 292 instead of a 291. This allows you to immediately put the key in the keyhole instead of having to do a right-left movement. Depending on execution, the time save is in the ballpark of half a second. Additionally, if we are getting down to the frames, there will always be time to save across different levels. Oil and Water has been able to just barely squeeze out a 260 in Donut Secret 1. After this category being absolutely torn apart in 2022 and 2023 thanks to Oil and Water and Tsuake, it's really hard to say what the future of this category will be. As of scripting this, I seriously think that the only person that can beat this time is Oil and Water himself, with him now having a 2.5 second lead over second place. He has been the only person so far to not only just get a 939, but also a 940 and 941. That's insane. I think it's safe to say that no matter what, this record will sit for quite a long time. No matter what, this specific run has become solidified as one of the most impressive Super Mario World speedruns of all time. What do you think will happen to this run in the future, and how much further do you think it can be pushed? Until it's improved upon, that's about all I have to say about this amazing feat. Thanks for watching.